The truth about rehab. What's it actually like? Does it really help? Do you need it? And how can you get the best out of it? When I first decided to go to rehab, I was down and out. I found myself in a mental hospital, not knowing where to go, which way was up, which way was down, or how to get sober, or even how to be sane. And rehab changed some things for me. There were some things I didn't like, there were some things I did like, and there were some things that were kind of scary. So today we're going to talk about all this stuff. We're going to talk about what rehab is actually like. What should you expect if you're going to rehab? What shouldn't you expect if you're going to rehab? Is it all nice, fancy places where you pet ponies and talk about your life? Or is it more rugged, more prison type rehab? Well, we're going to talk about all these things today. So if you're contemplating rehab and you think you should go, or maybe you don't think you need it, or maybe you just don't know what to think, this is the show for you because we both went to rehab. We both had different outcomes and different experiences to share with you. So let's fire this up. Terry, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's super windy here. It was rainy all weekend and the snow blocking drains and all that, but things are good. Life's good. It's all good. I love the weather.
Cool.
Anyways, about rehab. Yeah, as Marcus said, we both went to rehab. That's actually where we met, was in rehab. And we did have different outcomes, and we'll get into why we had those different outcomes. But I'm sure you're here because you want to know what rehab was actually like. And for me, um, well, let me start from the beginning. As far as deciding to go to rehab, because this is a difficult thing for most people, it's probably one of the most difficult decisions a person can make in their life is deciding that they need to go to rehab. And did I decide I needed to go to rehab? Like, was I drinking and drinking and drinking and going, I need to go to rehab? I think I'll go to rehab now. No, not at all. Life was spiraling downhill. I'm sure any of you that have problems with alcohol can relate to that. Things were getting worse. The consequences were getting worse. Everything was falling apart. And did I want to go to rehab? No, of course not. I was living by myself because I'd driven everybody out of my life and everything out of my life and my job and wife and all that stuff. It was myself and my dog. Did I want to leave my dog? No, of course not. But it came down to just desperation. I didn't know what to do. I knew needed to quit. And there was a girl I was seeing, and I finally admitted to her what my problem was, and she started to help me. And she got my brother actually to help find a rehab place. And did I want to go? No, I was fighting every bit of it all the way, and I'm sure that's the way most people are when they do end up going to rehab. Is most people don't want to go. I don't know that anybody ever wants to go to rehab and leave their life behind and all that stuff. But I decided that I'm gonna go. Darn it, and I went. And when I got there, there's an intake. So I went into intake. They take a breathalyzer to see where you're at. They want to know, does he need medical help? All that. They take your blood pressure, all that stuff. There's a nurse there. Our particular rehab that we went to was kind of in the woods, north of San Francisco Bay Area. A beautiful place. It was an old hunting lodge, is what it was, and they converted it into a rehabilitation, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, and drove up the road and went in there. They breathalyzed me. I blew a .15, which is more, 1.5 times legal limit, a little bit more. And I didn't drive there; somebody drove me there. But that was 14 hours after I'd stopped drinking. I was going through big time withdrawal. It was painful, all that stuff. And they in took me, and then they put me in a room, and that was the detox room, and that's where everybody goes if they're detoxing when they get to the rehab. And was kind of in and out of there. They take you out and go to meetings, and then they put you back and stuff like that. And um, but they keep an eye on you, make sure you're not going to have any medical emergencies, and they give you medicine to help you with your withdrawal symptoms. And I got to tell you, I felt terrible. Of course, I was very sick, but at the same time, I felt safe because I knew that there was a 24-hour nurse on duty, and people were checking on me and things like that. So that was kind of helpful right there. But that's what the first 3 days was like for me, basically, until I got through that that really difficult part of detox. And then they started to join the group. They gave me a room and things like that. Some of the rooms had two people per room. Some had one. I was lucky enough at first to get one with just one person, and so I had a room, and then I started to join everybody else. And for me, the feelings of rehab that I felt was just it wasn't difficult for me. It was pretty easy. Everybody's there for the same thing. There's a lot of people with different attitudes in there, and of course, there's the big egos and stuff like that. The big egos, like, I did this and this and this in my life. I'm a great person, or the egos of I was the biggest alcoholic of any of you, things like that. And it was kind of weird that way. But that was kind of what the feeling of rehab was like. I mean, the food was fine. I actually thought it was okay. It took me quite a few, maybe a week or two before the shake stopped. I had trouble even holding a glass without spilling it everywhere. My hands were all shaky and things like that. But it was okay. One thing I do remember, and this was more than 10 years ago, but they take your cell phone away. So Debbie hears your smoke alarm chirping. uh, Yeah, there's a smoke alarm chirping in Marcus's house somewhere, I think. Anyways, um, yeah, there's the one thing that with a place like rehab is you kind of get this loss of freedom, right? I mean, not really. They'll tell you right away if you don't want to stay, you can leave anytime. But if you're going to stay here, you're not going to drink, you're not going to do drugs, you're going to do what we tell you to do, and you don't get a cell phone. And so there's a lot of boredom involved. We're all attached to our cell phones. Even 10 years ago, we're attached to our cell phones and all the things that we get to do on them. But that was kind of an experience that was one thing I definitely missed. Of course, I missed my dog like crazy, and I was wondering how as my ex-wife was taking care of the dog, so I felt that he was probably okay. But did I really believe it? No, I didn't. I was kind of nervous about that. But um, during the time that we're there after you get through detox, they start to teach you about alcoholism, and that was super informative as far as what they teach and how alcohol affects us. It affects our brain, it affects our mindset, it affects our decision making, and that's it's important stuff that we need to learn, and learn that that one drink is going to drive us back into that alcoholic spiral, and just the hopelessness of when you're inactive um, alcohol misuse disorder, that you can't it's nearly impossible to get out of it without some help. And that's some things that they teach there. They'd also have a AA meeting in there. I think they had what was it, 5 days a week? They'd have a AA meeting come in there, and one day was a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, because there were people from that in there that had different addictions, or at least main addictions. Um, so there was a lot of that, and there was some drama there. The I think the ambulance had to come and take care of somebody twice when I was there for the 30 days. I think two different people got kicked out for doing some substances while they were there, and yeah, that stuff happens. But for me, it was no big deal. I didn't see any physical altercations. Of course, there's arguments. Everybody's going through detox. Everybody's angry that they've lost their freedom. They don't have the thing that makes them feel good anymore. There was definitely that, but it really wasn't too bad for me. And it was okay. I was thinking about this morning. If I was in that same situation, would I do it again? I don't know. I'd hope I'm never in that situation, but maybe I would. One thing I noticed in there was quite a few people that had been to rehab many, many times. In fact, the director or the head honcho of the place, he's a recovered addict, alcoholic. He'd been to rehab 13 times. There was a woman in there that was a resident, or that that was one of us. It was something like her 13th time, and it was amazing to me how many people had gone through rehab many, many times. And it's tough. It's tough, and you know, what happened with me is, you don't have alcohol or whatever drug you're in there for 30 days. So you do detox, you do get off of it. They do teach you what you need to do to stay sober. And they give you a really good blueprint for what to do to stay sober. And in fact, before you get out, they want you to have a game plan and they want to go over it with you as to what you are going to do when you get out. Because one thing they really emphasize is it's really easy to stay sober here, but what about when you go outside and all those problems come back and there's all those substances and alcohol available? What are you going to do to stay sober? And so they give you those tools to work with, but some people they don't follow, and that was kind of me as well. And I went to rehab because I was desperate. I went to rehab because I didn't see any other alternative. There was no better solution for me at that time. So I went. And when I was there, I felt that I got this. That's it. I'm fine. This is great. And then after a couple weeks, you just find it's boring. You do a lot of sitting around. You end, at least at our place, everybody ends up smoking too much. But that was kind of the way it went for me. I was bored. Was I working on what I was going to do when I got out? No, I was thinking about I can't wait to get home to my dog and get back to what all the stuff I used to do. Except I won't drink. That was my attitude. Well, what happened when I got out? Well, I got out and I went back and started doing the same thing that I used to do. Only I did go to meetings. I went to meetings, didn't get a sponsor, didn't work on sobriety, and I drank again. It only took me about a month of sobriety, and then I drank again. And what was it? It was that attitude of this is going to fix me, and that was a big issue, is that me thinking that this is going to fix me. They talk about, I was looking it up, and it's hard to get statistics, and they say that the only statistic I could find is 36% of the people that go to rehab end up getting sobriety for, lasting sobriety, which they call lasting sobriety for more than a year. Because after a year of sobriety, you have a much, much better chance of staying sober for the long term. It's that first year where many people relapse and things like that. And that's it seems like a pretty low statistic, because if you were to go to rehab's websites, a lot of them are going to say we have a 95% success rate, things like that. And it's all of those statistics are hard to really find out what the real success is, because let's say you start drinking and your rehab calls you to find out if you're sober, you're probably not going to answer. You're probably not going to answer truthfully. So who knows? But um, the one fact is that research has shown is that people that do go to rehab that are alcoholics do have a much higher success rate at staying sober over the long term. And it did help me, even though I started drinking. It did give me a basis for my sobriety. I had, I guess I could say a hiccup, but it wasn't really a hiccup. It was starting drinking again and going right back to where I was. But I did end up getting sober, and now have more than 10 years of sobriety. So I do definitely credit rehab for my sobriety, at least credited for a lot of it. But what it really came down to for me was that change in my perspective, and changing my perspective towards alcohol, especially, but towards life itself, learning how to live a life without alcohol, learning how to enjoy life without alcohol. And that's what was missing when I got out of rehab, is I did not learn those things on how to enjoy life, how to look at alcohol, and realize that it does me no good whatsoever. That short feeling is not going to help me. And Marcus had a bit of a different experience with rehab, and actually you might be surprised at how different his feelings were, and how and his outcome. But why don't you share a bit about that, Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, when I first went into rehab, I came out of the mental hospital, and I'm getting a little echo. Um, I think it's on your end. There it goes. And it was scary. I came out of the mental hospital, and it's basically like go to rehab or keep the insanity and don't be alive much longer, which is where I was headed. And having my rights stripped from me for 24 hours, it was supposed to be 72 hours, but I got out in like 4 hours, was interesting. That was very humiliating and very, wow, this is what I've become. This is not good. And then I agreed to go to rehab the next day. My wife had found the rehab that we went to in Sonoma or Napa or whatever it was, one of those counties over there. And I remember showing up, and I was like, wow, this is pretty scary. The guy who was checking in next to me, because we were at the desk and there's two people checking in at a time, was an older gentleman who was just not okay. And none of us really were. It was just a matter of who looks better than the other, right? And I checked in, and then I remember the first couple of days, there was this guy there that was really boisterous and angry. I think he was one of the ones that the ambulance was called on one time. And he was always in fights and always had some drama going on. And I was scared because I was like, okay, I'm not the biggest guy. I'm like 5 feet tall on a good day. And this guy was a bigger guy, very angry, very boisterous, kicking and yelling. And I don't know if he was there when you came, because I think you came after me. And I remember the first day, or one of the first days, I was standing there next to a wall, and he got really mad and kicked this bucket that we used for cleaning, and it went right by my head. And I was like, man, this is not a good experience. I'm a little worried about this stuff. And then he always had drama going on. My girlfriend did this, did that. He was going to kick people and hurt people and whatever. And I was like, okay, this is kind of scary. Maybe I should have splurged for the, ride on a unicorn rehab. But I didn't. At that time, I had almost lost my business and everything. And that was the only incident. And I think I dramatized it more in my head than it was in reality. Because I was one of those people who thought I had to take care of everyone and make sure everyone was okay. And so I'd check on the guy and talk to him, and I probably should have just minded my own business in hindsight, but, whatever happened, happened. And he left the rehab very early on, and in the beginning of rehab, I had a counselor who I couldn't really stand. He was really boring and didn't really get things, and he wasn't, like, the sharpest tool in the shed. And luckily, they had changed me to the guy that I had later on as a counselor, and that was very early on. And I liked that guy because, I thought I was going to go into rehab and rehash all these emotional traumas from my childhood and my life and all these things and deal with emotional stuff. That wasn't what it was at all, and I'm glad it wasn't, because keeping spinning in the shit that kept me drinking would have kept me drinking. And this is what a lot of people don't get. They think that drinking is about emotional issues and trauma and what your parents did and what this did. And it's not. It is not about that. It might make you want to drink. It might be what you dwell on when you drink. But it is not the reason that you drink. And this is what I learned in rehab. The reason I drink is because I'm an alcoholic and I pick up alcohol and I drink alcohol and alcohol makes me want more alcohol. That alone is the only reason I drink. That's why when I got out of rehab, I was able to stay sober, because I'm like, It's not me that wants to drink. It's not about the emotional stuff. It's not about all this other stuff. It is about chemical dependency. So if I don't have the chemical, I'm not dependent, and I'm no longer an alcoholic. And for whatever reason, that clicked, maybe because Big Dave drilled it into my head. We had this guy who's like a 65-year-old drug burnout, tried to get sober 50 million times, didn't work, and he drilled it into our head. Hey, you drink because you're an alcoholic, and you're choosing to start the pattern up again. If you don't choose it, it won't start. It's like Men in Black. He comes up to the bug and he's like, don't start nothing, won't be nothing. If you don't start nothing, it won't be nothing. If you stop drinking and you don't pick up again, you are no longer an active alcoholic. Now, is it sitting there and will it reactivate? Hell yeah. Just last night, I was helping my daughter move and there was someone smoking. And I walked by him and I was like, I missed that. I smelled it. I missed the cigars. I missed the smoking. And he was like, you don't miss it. And I'm like, I do. And that's why I don't have one. Because I know if I have one, it will activate my desire for the chemical and I will want more. So I don't have them. And realizing that is key. Because now it is the alcohol that is the problem. They don't call it like rehab for childhood trauma. That's not why I went there. I went there because I was an alcoholic. Everything else, sure, you might have issues. Absolutely. And I remember when I was looking for rehabs, I looked for co-addiction, co-problem rehabs. So they would deal with the neurological problem and the emotional problem. And I'm really glad none of those wrote me back because it wasn't about that. I thought I was smarter than alcohol. I thought I was smarter than my addiction. I thought I was the smartest guy in the rehab. Terry came up to me. I'm like, I don't know what this guy's doing, but whatever. I don't like this guy. I didn't like any guy. I didn't like anyone in rehab, really. I mean, there was a couple people that were nice, but for the most part, I went into rehab looking at it as this is a school for me to learn how to get sober. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here for anything else. Not here to make friends. Not here to get in drama. Not here to do anything other than get sober. And I had my notebook. I think I was the only person that was like avidly taking notes on everything. And I still have them. Actually, that's some of the stuff that we have in our Talk Sober program is the notes that I took in rehab.
I took 0 notes.
Yeah, I have a notebook here. It's like this thick with tons of stuff because I wanted to understand it because I looked at it from an educational standpoint. I was like, okay, if I can understand what is going on, then it would make sense to me. And I needed it to make sense. It had to make sense. I couldn't just be, I'm going to go to AA and blindly swallow whatever they give me. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want something dumb like, let go and let God. Like it's cute cliche and everything, but I let go and let God a bunch of times and I still went to the bar. Like, okay, bumper sticker sobriety didn't work for me. What I needed is understanding of what was happening to me. I remember going into therapy and I told my therapist, I said, something's wrong with me and you need to figure out what's wrong with me. She's like, no, nothing's wrong with you. And I was like, you're full of shit. Something's wrong with me. Why would I drink and why would I do all these things if nothing was wrong with me? She's like, nothing's wrong with you. And I was like, okay, whatever. And she spent like a year and a half trying to convince me nothing was wrong with me. And are there things wrong with me? Sure. Is it character defects that cause me to drink? No, it's alcohol that causes me to drink. Like, we all got character defects, and dealing with them is good. That will stop you from drinking again. Like, the more tools you get to stop yourself from drinking again, the stronger you will be about that. However, now, where I was at the time of rehab, I was chemically dependent, and I don't care if I solved the problems going back to before I was born. It doesn't matter. I was chemically dependent.
Right.
All bets are off. Chemically dependent. And the longer you get away from alcohol, the easier it becomes. I don't really have to drink. Things frustrate me. I can get angry. I can get sad. I can have that stuff. I don't need to drink. Why? Because that's not the solution. Understanding that is the key. SG says rehab is pretty much useless. You either want to stop or you don't. It's really that struggle. I disagree. I disagree. I don't think, Terry, you didn't want to stop when you went to rehab.
No.
Yeah, I don't, like, I didn't really want to.
Well, I have to say that I wanted to stop, but I didn't want to sacrifice all of the things that I felt that I had.
Yeah.
And going to rehab was sacrificing the comfort that I had being at home.
Yeah. And I think if you took someone who really didn't want to stop drinking and threw them in a rehab, the net effect would be positive. I don't think it'd be a negative effect. Like, I think they'd learn something. Like, my brother went to the same rehab Terry and I went to. And when you talk about failing rehab, Terry, drank a little bit within the first month, and he's been sober ever since. I would call that a success. Just a little bit of a delayed, there's a little, you had to drill it into yourself one more time. I wouldn't call it a failure. My brother is 8 years, maybe 9 years out of rehab. He never really got it. He still struggles. He completely drinks himself into oblivion at least probably once a month on a sober month. Like, that's his sobriety is 3 weeks bender, 3 weeks bender, 1 week bender, constant drinking. It's a cycle. For whatever reason, he didn't get it. And, it could be the environment you go to after rehab is important. His environment, the people he lives with, did not want to get sober. They
That's tough.
wouldn't get the alcohol out of the house. They fight all the time. If my wife was an alcoholic and I came out of rehab and went to an alcoholic home, I wouldn't be sober today. Guaranteed. 100%. Probably wouldn't even be alive today because that's where alcohol was taking me. Having that and realizing, like, okay, I need to protect myself from drinking. What am I going to do? In rehab, they talked a lot about our exit plan. What are you going to do? What is your support like? Where are you going to live? A lot of people went to sober living houses, which could be good, could be bad. I mean, when you put addicts together, one of them's bound to use. I mean, that's just the numbers. I mean, put 4 together, chances are 1 or 2 is going to use. Being around that could trigger it for you. So, I mean, if I had the choice between a sober living house or living on my own and getting support with AA and people, or living with someone that's already sober, like a good sober living house would be like you're living with someone who's 8 years sober who actually gives a rip about your sobriety. That would be a good move. Unfortunately, I think it's pretty much the same nationwide. Do you know the credentials you need to run a sober living house?
From the last time I looked, there really wasn't much oversight as to what the requirements for running a sober house was, at least, and I know it varies state to state.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of variance.
The requirement is a house.
Yeah.
So, like, legit, I can start an SLE if I have a house with empty rooms. And a lot of people do it because, I can get $800 per person per room and have 2 per room. So, versus renting a house out.
Some people put bunk beds in there and put 4 a room.
Yeah. And sadly, you might even be better off just renting a room in a regular house because sometimes they're not run right. And that was one of the things that I saw that was very difficult as well because, we went in a co-ed rehab and there were some young gals there and it's like, okay, this isn't the safest place to be. I mean, you got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And then SLEs, a sober living environment, sometimes it's not always the safest thing. You think everyone has your best interest at heart, but that's not always the case. I learned that in church. It's like, okay, here's this guy who's like upstanding, suit and tie, Jesus guy. And, they take advantage of people sometimes. And that's one of the things that I learned early on is no matter what, rehab, AA, sober living, your sobriety is yours and yours alone.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to help you. You go to the bar and you drink again, you're on your own. You don't drink, you're on your own. Like, this is it's a lonely journey, but there are people. Like you can go to AA and you can meet people and you can talk about things. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to stop you from going into the bar. Nobody's going to stop you from drinking in your house. Nobody's going to stop you from these things. And that's where you got to protect yourself in and out of rehab, because in rehab I had the opportunity to use. There was two people using two different substances. I was like, maybe that'd be interesting to try. I'm not really comfortable. Here I am in rehab with 24-hour a day, 7-day a week anxiety. Off the chart from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed. Off the chart anxiety. And understanding like, okay, could I have escaped from it? Sure. I could escape and, whatever those other people had. Or I could just focus on what I want to do, which is stay sober. And I knew that I had to. And a lot of you guys out there, you have to get sober. You know that there is no other option. You need to get sober. This isn't working. It's not going to be sustainable. And it's time. And maybe it's time to check into a rehab. Obviously, get your ducks in a row, make sure everything's sorted. But one of the things I learned, because I was terrified of leaving my business and my family for a month. And then like 2 weeks in, I was like, the world is still spinning without me out there doing things.
Yep.
Wow, that's kind of humbling.
Yeah.
And we
the
learned
grass
things.
in my yard was really, really long when I got home.
Yeah, yep, still going. Your dog was still happy.
I do have to say one thing with SG, with your comment of rehab is pretty much useless. You either want to stop or you don't. It's really that simple. There is truth to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to stop, rehab is not going to help you. Well, it might help you, because I didn't want to stop, and I did start drinking again, but it did help me. It helped me a lot. But if you do want to stop, see, that's the difference between where Marcus was and I was, is did I really want to stop? Was I really ready to stop? And I don't think I was. Marcus was ready. He was going to do whatever it took. He understood, well, he studied everything that Big Dave was teaching us and what his counselor was telling us. And he was watching what other people were doing that he saw was like, nope, I'm not going to do what that guy is doing. That ain't going to work, stuff like that. And me, I was just going with the flow. Yeah, get me through this. You're going to cure me. I'm going to be cured when I get out. Yeah, that was a big difference right there. So yeah, if you, and that's one thing you'll hear, and I've heard it lots in the AA rooms and everywhere is, when you're working with somebody, there's nothing you can say to a person to get them sober if they don't really want to get sober. And if somebody does want to get sober, there's nothing that you say that will not let them get sober. Everything you say is going to help them. It's just, it's that mindset. It's a lot of what our program talks about is changing that mindset. That's what we have to do to maintain that sobriety. So we really have to change that mindset. And that's what I've managed to do so far. Sometimes it creeps back in, but that's why I try to stay aware.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. You want to talk about, let me see if I have the Talk Sober open here. All right. You want to talk about our course and what you've been working on with it?
Yeah, sure. So we have a program over at talksober.com, and we talk a lot more about this stuff, changing that mindset and making it where alcohol just isn't an issue. Because if it was an issue for me, if I was still fighting it right now, I would probably be drinking. That's too big of a fight to fight consistently. So our program will help you change your mindset, help you stay sober, help you learn to live that life where alcohol just isn't an issue. You don't want it. You don't need it. And right there on that, you can click that yellow button and join our online recovery class. And you can also get a private call with Marcus and myself. And we have a Facebook group where we can talk to each other and help support each other. And yeah, this is what Marcus and I have done to stay sober, and we're sharing it with you guys. And just jump on over there, and
Yeah.
you can go over there, check it out. There's some free stuff on there too. Should you go to rehab, there's a tab right there, and there's a little video there, and a little self quiz as to whether you need, whether you might need some help with rehab or just go to a doctor or whatever. And yeah, and join us here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Absolutely. So hop on over there, get yourself signed up. Again, we're here every Tuesday. You can click that yellow button. Terry's working on all kinds of cool stuff to help you get and stay sober and everything like that. Again, we're not trained counselors, doctors, or anything like that. We're just sharing what we learned and what keeps us sober. So
Yeah.
thanks. Yep, go
Oh,
ahead.
and one more thing I forgot to say that, yeah, our program completely redone. We're going to get it up within the next week or two here. And yeah, you'll have to check it out.
All right. Cool deal. All right. Well, thanks for being here, guys, and we'll see you.